The rain hammered against the windows of our Manchester flat, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. For 20 years, Alistair, a 46-year-old IT specialist, had built a life with Bronwyn. We met at university, two bright sparks drawn together by shared dreams and a love for rainy days spent reading by the fire. Now the fire was dying and the dreams were turning to ash. It started subtly. Bronwyn, usually so open and communicative, became withdrawn. Her laughter, once a constant melody in our home, grew infrequent. She started working late, claiming increased pressure at the law firm where she was a senior partner. I, naive fool that I was, accepted her explanations without question. I trusted her implicitly. That was my first mistake. The first crack in the facade appeared innocently enough. I was tidying up one Saturday morning when Bronwyn's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Mateo X flashed across the screen. It was a name I didn't recognize. I wouldn't have thought twice about it except for the accompanying emoji, a single red heart. "Who's Mateo?" I asked that evening, trying to sound casual as we sat down for dinner. Bronwyn's face tightened imperceptibly. "Just a colleague," she said, avoiding my gaze. "He's helping me with a particularly difficult case." I let it go, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few weeks, Mateo appeared with increasing frequency. Late-night texts, hushed phone calls taken in the garden, a new perfume that I hadn't bought her. The signs were all there, whispering insidious suspicions in my ear. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home, watching Bronwyn from a distance as she drifted further and further away from me. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was becoming a ghost, replaced by someone cold and distant. One evening, Bronwyn announced that she had to go to a conference in London for a few days. "It's crucial for my career, Alistair," she said, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I know it's short notice, but I have to go." I wanted to believe her, but the Mateo texts were a constant, nagging reminder of my growing unease. This time, I couldn't ignore it. I decided to do something I never thought I was capable of. I decided to spy on my own wife. I told Bronwyn I would drive her to the train station, feigning support and concern. As soon as she boarded, I went to the ticket counter and purchased a ticket for the very next train to London. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of dread and determination fueling my actions. When I arrived in London, I took a taxi to the hotel Bronwyn had mentioned. I watched from across the street as she checked in, alone. So far, so good, I thought, trying to quell the rising tide of panic. But my relief was short-lived. About an hour later, a man arrived at the hotel. He was tall, handsome, with dark, piercing eyes and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. It was Mateo. He strode into the hotel without a second glance, disappearing inside. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The air was sucked out of my lungs and my vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. I waited for what felt like an eternity, pacing back and forth outside the hotel, my mind racing with a kaleidoscope of emotions: anger, betrayal, disbelief, and a crushing sense of loss. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I had to see it with my own eyes. I walked into the hotel, my hands shaking, and approached the front desk. "I'm looking for my wife," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She's staying here for a conference." "Bronwyn." I trailed off, unable to finish her name. The receptionist, a young woman with a sympathetic smile, typed something into her computer. "Room 312, she said, handing me a key card. "But sir, I really don't think." I didn't wait for her to finish. I grabbed the key card and ran towards the elevators, my heart pounding in my ears. The ride to the third floor felt like an eternity. When the doors finally opened, I stumbled out, my legs feeling like lead. I walked down the hallway, my hand trembling as I approached room 312. I took a deep breath, swiped the key card, and pushed the door open. The scene that greeted me was like a nightmare come to life. Bronwyn and Mateo were in bed, naked and entwined, lost in their own world of lust and deceit. They didn't even notice me at first, their eyes glazed over with passion. Then Bronwyn's eyes flickered open and she saw me. Her face drained of all color and her mouth formed a silent O. Mateo turned to see what she was looking at, and his expression shifted from lust to shock to a sneering contempt. Time seemed to slow down as I stood there, paralyzed by disbelief. The woman I had loved for 20 years, the woman I had trusted with my whole heart, was lying in bed with another man, her betrayal as stark and undeniable as the rain lashing against the windows outside. Finally, I found my voice. "How could you?" I whispered, the words barely audible. "How could you do this to me?" Bronwyn didn't answer. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. Mateo, on the other hand, seemed to relish the moment. He smirked at me as if daring me to react. "Get out," I said, my voice rising in anger. "Get out of my life." Bronwyn started to cry, but I didn't care. Her tears were meaningless to me now, as hollow and false as her promises of love and fidelity. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them to their shame. I stumbled back to the train station, my mind numb, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The journey back to Manchester was a blur. I sat in silence, staring out the window, watching the rain streak across the glass. The world outside seemed gray and lifeless, mirroring the emptiness inside me. When I arrived home, I went straight to the bedroom and started packing my things. I didn't say a word to Bronwyn when she arrived later that evening, her face streaked with tears. I simply handed her my wedding ring and walked out the door. I spent the next few months in a small, rented flat, trying to piece my life back together. The pain of Bronwyn's betrayal was a constant companion, a dull ache that never seemed to go away. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I couldn't stop thinking about her and Mateo. My friends tried to be supportive, but I could see the pity in their eyes. They didn't understand what it was like to have your heart ripped out and stomped on. They hadn't experienced the soul-crushing realization that the person you loved most in the world was a liar and a cheat. As the weeks turned into months, I slowly began to emerge from my cocoon of despair. I started going to the gym, throwing myself into my work, and spending time with my friends. I even started seeing a therapist who helped me to process my emotions and to understand that Bronwyn's betrayal was not a reflection of my worth as a person. One day, I received a letter from Bronwyn. It was a long, rambling apology, filled with excuses and justifications for her actions. She claimed that she had been unhappy for years, that I had been too distant and emotionally unavailable, and that Mateo had simply filled a void in her life. I read the letter with a sense of detachment, as if I were reading about someone else's life. I no longer felt the burning anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long. I simply felt a profound sadness for the woman Bronwyn had become, a woman I no longer recognized. I didn't reply to her letter. I had nothing left to say. Our story was over, and it was time for me to move on. A few months later, I ran into an old colleague of Bronwyn's at a local cafe. We chatted for a while, catching up on old times. As I was about to leave, he leaned in and said, "You know, I always thought Bronwyn was a bit of a cold fish. She was always so ambitious and driven, but she never seemed truly happy." He paused, then added, "I heard she left Mateo a few months ago. Apparently, he was a bit of a control freak, always telling her what to do and who to see. She's been trying to get back into the firm, but the partners aren't too keen on taking her back after all the drama." I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't expected. It wasn't revenge exactly, but it was a kind of karmic justice. Bronwyn had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. I left the cafe with a lighter heart. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope for the future. I knew that the scars of Bronwyn's betrayal would always be with me, but they no longer defined me. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but with increasing confidence. I met a lovely woman named Isolde, who was kind, intelligent, and funny. She had also been through a difficult divorce, and we bonded over our shared experiences. Isolde helped me to see that there was still love and happiness in the world, and that I deserved to be loved and happy. She taught me to trust again, to open my heart to the possibility of a new beginning. One sunny afternoon, as we were walking along the beach, Isolde turned to me and said, "You know, Alistair, you're a good man. You deserve all the happiness in the world." I smiled at her, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Thank you, Isolde," I said. "That means a lot to me." We stopped walking and looked out at the ocean, the waves crashing against the shore. The sun was shining, the sky was blue, and for the first time in years I felt truly at peace. I had survived Bronwyn's betrayal. I had emerged from the darkness stronger and wiser. And I had found love again, a love that was real, honest, and true. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I had learned to swing. And I was ready for whatever the future might hold. Years passed. Isolde and I built a wonderful life together. We traveled, we laughed, we supported each other through thick and thin. The memory of Bronwyn faded into the background, a distant echo of a life that was no longer mine. One day I received an unexpected email. It was from Mateo. He wrote that he was living in Spain, working as a bartender. He said that he had always regretted his affair with Bronwyn, that it had been a mistake that had cost him everything. He claimed that Bronwyn had been manipulative and demanding, that she had used him to get back at me for some perceived slight. He said that he had eventually realized that he was nothing more than a pawn in her game. He ended the email by apologizing for the pain he had caused me. He said that he hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive him. I stared at the email for a long time, feeling a strange mixture of pity and contempt for Mateo. He was a weak and pathetic man, easily manipulated by a woman like Bronwyn. I didn't reply to his email. I didn't see any point in dredging up the past. I had moved on, and he was nothing more than a footnote in my life. I deleted the email and turned back to Isolde, who was waiting for me in the garden, a cup of tea in her hand. I smiled at her, feeling grateful for the love and happiness she had brought into my life. "Everything all right, darling?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Everything's perfect," I said, taking her hand in mine. Absolutely perfect, and it was. Bronwyn's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also been a catalyst for change. It had forced me to reevaluate my life, to confront my fears, and to discover my own strength and resilience. I had lost a wife, but I had gained a life. A life that was richer, deeper, and more meaningful than anything I could have imagined. To those of you who are going through a similar experience, I want to say this: you are not alone. Betrayal is a painful and devastating experience, but it doesn't have to define you. You are stronger than you think, and you are capable of healing and moving on. Don't let the actions of others destroy your faith in humanity. There are still good people in the world, people who are capable of love, compassion, and loyalty. Open your heart to the possibility of finding love again, and don't give up on your dreams. The road to recovery may be long and difficult, but it is worth it. Because on the other side of the pain, there is hope, happiness, and a new beginning. Believe in yourself and never give up on the possibility of a brighter future. And remember, you are not a victim. You are a survivor, and you will emerge from this experience stronger and more resilient than ever before.